Ciao ragazzi! This video will explain how to use the verbs arrivare, prendere, and partire. As you can probably guess, arrivare means to arrive, and partire is less obvious, but there is a connection to English. It means to depart or to leave. Prendere is probably the trickiest one to remember because it isn't similar to anything in English really, but prendere means to take or to get. So with our topic this term being transport, these verbs are obviously very important. We will use them to talk about where and at what time we will arrive, what type of transport we will take, and also at what times we will depart. So just to recap what we already know about Italian verbs, we know that there are some rebel verbs, those irregular verbs that don't follow the predictable pattern. Andare is the most recent irregular verb that we learnt. The good thing about the three verbs that we're learning today, however, is that they are all regular verbs. They all fit into the categories and follow the patterns. So arrivare is an are verb, prendere is an ere verb, and partire is an ire verb. So we'll start by looking at arrivare, to arrive, and our verb tables are very familiar to you, I'm sure, at this stage. At the very top we have what's called the infinitive of the verb, which is basically the title or the name of the verb. In English, it's always a to form of the verb, so in this case, to arrive. We know down the left-hand side here we have our subject pronouns. Those are the things that tell us who we are talking about. So io, I, tu, you, lui or lei, he or she, noi, we, voi, you plural or all of you, and loro, they. So when we are conjugating a regular verb, we usually take 3 steps. The first step, step 1, is that we cross off our ending, so the last 3 letters. In this case, it's the are, the are ending. And what we're left with is the stem of the verb. This is the very beginning of the verb. So if you think of a flower, the stem is the basis, the basis of the flower which supports the rest of it, and it's similar with a verb. Our stem is what we're going to build the rest of the verb on. So step 2, we have our stem and we're going to copy that down into all of the rows because all of these conjugations will begin with the stem arrive in this case. The very last thing we need to do to complete the verb, so step 3, is that we need to add our endings. For are verbs, the endings are o, I, a, iamo, ate, ano. So now we have completed the verb, and it looks like this. Io arrivo, I arrive. Tu arrivi, you arrive. Lui o lei arriva, he or she arrives. Noi arriviamo, we arrive. Voi arrivate, you plural arrive, all of you arrive. And loro arrivano, they arrive. Okay, so it's time for some practice now because, as you know, learning how to use a verb is important, but it's not really useful until you can put it into a sentence correctly. So here are some incomplete sentences, and all of them are missing the verb arrivare. What you need to do is read the sentence and decide which form of arrivare you need to use to complete the sentence correctly. So when you come to a sentence that includes a person's name, you need to think about how you could replace that name with a pronoun. For example, here we have Sara, And we could replace that name by saying she in English. So in Italian we would use the lei form. In a similar way, in question 7, we have the names Federica e Stefano. So again, if we wanted to replace those names in English, we would say they, and in Italian, loro. So pause the video to give yourself a chance to complete the questions, and when you're happy with your responses, you can start the video up again to check your answers. So these are our responses to the exercises. Number 1, io arrivo alle 10. Number 2, tu arrivi a Roma. Number 3, Sara arriva in treno. Number 4, Marco arriva alle 12:30 a Milano. Number 5, noi arriviamo in ritardo. Number 6, voi arrivate in macchina giovedì mattina, vero? And number 7, Federica e Stefano arrivano alle 9 meno un quarto in traghetto. So moving on to our next verb, prendere, to get or to take, our steps will be very similar. So again, step 1, we will remove the ending. In this case, it is an ere ending, an ere, and we do have our stem. In this case, our stem is prend. So step 2, we're going to start off all of our conjugations with the stem prend. And then in step 3, we're going to finish off the verb by adding our endings. Now, because this is an ere verb, they are slightly different to the are verb endings. So the endings are o, I, e, iamo, ete, ono. So io prendo, I get or take. Tu prendi, you get or take. Lui, lei prende, he or she gets or takes. Noi prendiamo, we take or we get. Voi prendete, you plural take or get. And loro prendono, they take or they get. So it's time for some more practice. Again, you have sentences with missing verbs. So the verb prendere is missing from each of these sentences, and again you need to read the sentence and decide which form of the verb fits best into each one. So pause the video again, give yourself a chance to answer the questions, and then check and see how you've gone. So to correct our prendere exercises, these are the answers. Number 1, io prendo il tram. Number 2, tu prendi l'aereo a Roma. Number 3, Sara prende l'autobus alle 11:15. Number 4, Marco prende la metropolitana alle 3:10. Number 5, noi non prendiamo l'autobus, andiamo a piedi. Number 6, voi prendete l'aereo o il treno? And number 7, Federica e Stefano prendono il treno a Firenze e poi prendono l'autobus a Milano. So now we've come to our last verb, partire, to leave or to depart, and this time this is an ire verb, an ire verb. So our steps are very familiar to you by now. We cross off our ending, we are left with the stem, which is part, and our stem begins each conjugation. Now we finish the verb off by adding the endings. So again, these are slightly different to the previous two forms, but the endings are o, I, e, Iamo, ite, ono. So, io parto, I leave. Tu parti, you leave. Lui o lei parte, he or she leaves. Noi partiamo, we leave. Voi partite, you plural, leave, all of you leave. And loro partono, they leave. So again, some more practice. What part of the verb partire fits into all of these sentences? Pause the video and complete the sentences and then start it up again to check your answers. So here are the answers to the partire exercises. Number 1. Io parto alle 9:25. Number 2. Tu parti venerdì in macchina? Number 3. Sara parte alle 8:10 di mattina. Number 4. Marco parte domenica sera in motorino. Number 5. Noi partiamo alle 6 di sera e arriviamo alle 11. Number 6. Voi partite domani mattina o domani sera? And number 7. Federica e Stefano partono a mezzogiorno, prendono l'autobus e arrivano all'1:50. So to recap, we have 3 groups of regular verbs in Italian and three patterns of endings, and they are slightly different. So for are verbs, we have the endings o, I, a, iamo, ate, ano. For ere verbs, our endings are o, I, e, iamo, ete, ono. And ire verbs, o, I, e, iamo, ite, ono. So to look at some similarities, the io form always ends in o. The tu form always ends in I. And the noi form always ends in iamo. Ere and ire verbs have the same endings for the lui and lei forms. They both end in e. And ere and ire verbs also have the same endings for the loro forms. They both end in ono. So you're now familiar with how are, ere and ire verbs work in Italian, and you have had some practice using arrivare, prendere, and partire as well. And these are 3 verbs that will be extremely useful when we are discussing our topic of transport. So remember to ask your teacher if you have any questions, and continue to practice your verbs to increase your confidence in Italian speaking and writing. Arrivederci e buon lavoro!